What's up, guys? This is Emin from JERMUK, here to give you guys a tutorial on like the full breakdown of Down for This new song that's out on NSYS Records. Just got released, I think, last Monday. So let's just get into it. I'm gonna talk about the break, the drop, the stabs and stuff. Also, I'll give out free stems to the song. So, you know, if you like the stabs or you like the leads, give it the presets and the waves of the stuff so you can just download it. But here I'll go over like how I mixed it, how it sounds, and whatever. So I guess the best part starts from the beginning, kind of. I think it's just an intro. Let's see where it starts from. Right here, 25. So intro is, I mean, pretty basic, really nothing to show here. Just kind of have a sweep down, some sweeps ups, a little fill right here, some toms, clap. Here's the kick. I'll show the kick later in the drop. Here's just like a stripped down version of the melody during the intro with, I think there's a filter, should be a filter or something. There's a washout. No, that's during the build up. Yeah, so there's an EQ right here, turned on, automated. So it's pretty cut off at all times. I think both. Yeah, there's two. So there's one on the low end and then there's another one on the high end, just to kind of, you know, make it sound filtered during the intro because you don't want it to be the actual drop sound. You kind of just want to tease it, give it a little taste. And then there's literally nothing else going on. That's it. So the intro and the outro is pretty much just like parts of the song that are kind of like stripped down during those sections. It's not really much to it, and it's not the most important part of the song. You know, it needs to be good to people to like know what kind of genre you're doing. You can kind of tell right off the bat, but most people just skip those 30 seconds anyway. So there's that. So let's talk about the build-up. So build-up, this snare build is just a preset. I mean, from a sample pack. I just grabbed it. It sounded good. I put it in there. So this is what it sounds like. And then we have the cashmere fill right here. But I took out whatever he had. I think he had like he had this. But I took that out and I just put my own little Preta snare there somewhere. It's somewhere else. Then I have this vocal, which I have pitch. I think it's pitching up.
Let me see you get. 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 Let me see. 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 Let
All right. So it's not pitching, but there's a vocoder on here. So I put an Ableton vocoder. This is what the synth looks like for the vocoder. It's turned off. But I don't know if you want to copy this. Just I'll play the sound. Probably pretty basic sound. So it's just playing chords, or just a F, another F, and then the C on top, the harmonic C on top. And then it's just automated so that in the beginning there's no vocoder. Dry wet is at 0, and then it just kind of, by the time it's right before the drop, that little pre-drop place, it's fully vocoded. And I just have a sausage fanner to get it a little bit louder. And then I have a little altar boy right here, which kind of gives it a format. It keeps it at the same pitch, but it changes the format. Probably don't. Yeah, it's turned on during the drop. So that's what it sounds like here. Not doing much. It's mostly just repeating, but it is formatted down by 12. I don't know exactly what that 12 semitones by format, I guess, but it's not really changing the pitch. It just changes kind of how it changes the tone, but not really the pitch, if that makes sense. The pitch is still the exact same, F, whatever it's at. And then I just widened it and then lowered the volume. And then I think it's the same thing again, yeah, during the second buildup. Okay, so go down. Here's the leads. So basically just filtered and then getting ready for the drop. This is pretty basic, nothing really special going on here. A crash, a reverb kick with some white noise, another white noise downlifter, and that's it. Very basic build up, nothing special going on there. In the drop, the cool part is the stabs. These are really nice stabs. This is what they sound like. So I'll go over the stabs right now. So this is the first stab that hits. So here's the serum patch. I'll give out the preset. I made the preset myself. It's nothing too fancy going on here. Just got the Evil sweep as the wave table. I have a LFO6 which is doing this curve, and I just put it on anything that makes a difference in the sound. So wavetable position. So basically, instead of like choosing a wavetable, you kind of make it move. So if I play it, you'll see the wavetable, and then what the sync does. So the wavetable kind of just changes how it looks. You can tell like that, and then the sync makes more repetitions of that particular wavelength. So like this is how it normally looks, this wavelength, but then when you go like this, you can tell, like, see how it's like kind of repeating, like there's one here and then there's another one of the same thing here. So that's what the sync does. It's basically increases the pitch without increasing the pitch, kind of. But that's kind of how you hear it. You hear it as it's increasing the pitch. Oscillator B is turned off, but let me see what it sounds like. Yeah, that doesn't sound good, so I turned it off. Here's a filter, just a high pass 12. The cutoff is moving, and then the frequency is also moving from the top. So it's basically a peak filter on the top. Put a little bit of drive to it, and that's that. That's the oscillator part. For the effects, there's this distortion, high amount of drive, tube distortion, multiband compressor, hyper dimension to give it some wideness, because it's only one voice. So there is no wideness coming out of this. It's just one straight mono. So you put it hyper dimension and it kind of widens it out. A phaser, which kind of does the same thing, makes it a little bit wider, makes it sound like a little watery, if that makes sense. But the mix is pretty low. You don't want to go too high on the mix, especially for like a prominent sound, like a stab or a lead. If the phase is too high, it's gonna sound weak. So low phase kind of makes it sound interesting, but it kind of keeps the integrity of the sound still. And then the EQ just to boost a little bit of the high end, and that's it. I keep doing stuff. And then the processing is just an LFO because I wanted to kind of get rid of the high end. I could have just done a release on the thing. What's it called? In the synth, which I think I just have it on full sustain in the synth. No, so the sustain is lowered by minus 25 dB. But when you have all this processing after, it slams the sound back up, so it's almost like there is no release. So I put a LFO with this kind of curve to give it an automatic release, so that it does it for even after the processing, it still has it. And then I have some more processing after it, so it kind of brings it up again. But you know, but if I didn't have this, you wouldn't really hear it. So let's hear. See how like it's sustained? It goes it's not moving down, but when I have this on, you can tell it's dying. Like the sound is going away, which is how I wanted the stab to sound. Ping pong delay, just to give it a little delay. Valhalla vintage verb, barely any mix because I have an OTT and a sausage fanner after it. OTT, barely any dry wet, 23%. That's the only thing I changed. And then 18% fatness on my sausage fattener. And then I have this kick right here. It's basically a hardstyle kick. I just took out the low end of it. So all the low end is shaved off, and this is what it sounds like. So just another layer to it. And then I have this stab as well. It's kind of like a super saw, but not really. Let's see what it is. Yeah, so it's just like, it's basically the same serum patch as the one before, but I kind of just changed some stuff, so you can kind of tell. You see this one right out, it has 5 unison, or a lot of detune, has a mirror I forgot what this is called. Warp. That's what it's called. Warp has a mirror warp instead of the sync warp. So this one mirrors it, so it kind of looks like a mirror instead of giving you more. Just kind of mess with the warps to see what they do. But yeah, that's pretty much all I did. So I just changed that. Pretty much this is all the same. I just turned off the phaser and the EQ. And I think I also raised the hyper dimension to make it even wider. So this bottom layer is basically the wide one, to get it as wide as possible. And it's pretty low compared to the rest of it in the mix, -13, while these are -2, -2. So those hit twice. And then I have this stab, which sounds like this. This is pretty much the same as the one before. So everything is pretty much the same. I think I just lowered the drive a little bit. Everything else looks the same. 1 unison, sync. Yeah, pretty much everything else is the same. Might be like small modifications. But the main difference is that it has this LFO, which triggers it. So the rate is on 1/16. So every 16th, it does this curve. So the volume goes from high to low every 16. That's why you hear like kind of that stuttering. So I could have like chopped it up myself or like done it in serum, but I just kind of did it like this. Sound a little bit, it was just easier because I already had the other LFO. And then at the same time, I kind of lower it. And then again, there's another LFO which kills it at the end. So you can see it's like stuttering. So there's this sound, this hit, this hit, this hit, this hit. And then the volume is kind of dipping down. So it's not continuous. If I turn those off, you'll hear how it sounds. So if I turn this off. So it's just one long sustained stab. Whereas if I turn both those things on, you get that. You get like that little, you get that little stutter. And then I grouped all those into one group, got rid of the low end again. I put an isotope trash with a clip control preset. I lowered it here, so I don't think it's clipping. Sometimes I lower it because I don't want it to clip. Other times, like an aggressive sound, it just sounds better when you clip it. And then afterwards, it's not really clipping because it's just going into the distortion plugin loud as hell. And then the distortion is kind of chopping everything off. So it's kind of like a limiter. It's kind of like if you raise a limiter, you put like a large amount of gain reduction on a limiter. It's basically what's going on here. I have a big amount of, so +5 and +4 dB of input going into that limiter or the distortion, and then it's just kind of shaving it off and making it straight. It's basically limiting the sound and making it sound huge and aggressive. Because you can tell at the end right here, it's at -0.1, so it's no longer clipping. Basically, it's at 0 at the max volume. And then I have another LFO here, which is just like a kick LFO, which is so with this curve, the rate is at 1/4. So just to like get it out of the way of the kick, and then that's the stab. I think it's the same everywhere. I have like a little modulation going on here. I think it's just panning. Let me double check. Yeah. So it's just pitched up. And it's just pitched up. No, I think it's on octave above, and then it's panning from left to right. So I have this thing automating right here, panning it from left to right. So those are the stabs. Okay, let's go to the leads. So these leads are in the pack that we put out, the JERMUK Volume 1 Serum Pack. They have these leads in there. It's just called Down for One, Down for This One, and Down for This Two, I think. But I'll just go over them again, and then I'll give it out in this stem pack as well. So I'll just play them all together. So there's 2 different sounds, kind of similar, but here's what they sound like soloed. So let's just go over this first sound. This is what the first sound sounds like. Basically the main sound in the first one. Got an LFO, put it on all this stuff. The filter's turned off, so these are useless. But I have these two again, mirror, warp. Warps are important. That's what gives the sound movement, so it doesn't get boring when you use a warp. So that's an important thing. Also, I have a fast LFO on the phase. Usually I like to put it on the fine, but this sounded good on the phase. It just kind of gives it that dirtier sound. And then just some tube distortion, multiband compressor, and then a little width, because again, it's just on one voice, so there's no wideness already in the sound. So if I like increase the unison, I'm sure you guys know what unison does, but here, let me put the random up so it's not. So if you're wearing headphones, you can definitely tell it sounds a lot wider. It's like all the way on the side. Whereas if I do this and I turn off the hyperdimension, it's like directly in the middle. So use that to your advantage. The main sound, usually you want it pretty centered, and then you want to put surrounding sounds to make it sound huge and wide. But you can get away with, you can use unison. I usually do put unison on the main sounds. Probably not this. I probably do something like this, like 3 unison, or like an odd number, so that you have this middle one. So you can see this that middle yellow. That's basically a mono one, and then there's those 2 on the side, right? So if I use 3, there's those 2 on the side, and then there's that one middle one. But if you use like 6, it's not really centered. They're kind of off to the side. So you kind of want to keep the one in the center, and then you can use this blend to make the center even more prominent. So those are just some things to consider. But for this one, I just used 1 unison, and then the detune and the blend don't matter at all, because there's no other, wavetable. There's only one copy of it. So if there's 2, then these matter, right? They stop moving, and then this as well. But if you only have 1, there's nothing to move. So that's that. This is just basic shape, just a basic saw. Nothing changed here. Just the sync to make it look like that. So when I play it, you're gonna hear it move. As that was. All right. So when I play it, you're gonna see the basic shape mod. You can see both of them actually, because both of them are LFO. So you're gonna see them move. So that's the cool thing about Serum. You can see like in real time what's going on. You can't really see that on like Silent or Spire or Next. Well, Next is not even really a synth. So yeah, there's that sound. Next sound. Let's see what this is. So this one just has unison on it, 2 unison, no detune, to make it sound like it's in the middle. It's still in the middle, but it's like phasing with itself, if that makes sense, because there is no detunement, and it's on random. And then hyperdimension, which is pretty high up there. I think it's more than the other one. And then a chorus to make it even more wide. And then the rest of it is probably the same. The processing, I think, is the same on every single sound. Yeah, it's basically just a reverb, OTT, take out the low end, and then a sausage fanner to make it loud. And then the group is, again, take out the low end, and then an isotope trash with clip control to kind of, again, control the clip and make it kind of distort it. And then these are just automations, like the washout. It's just kind of like a reverb. It's a reverb, and it gets rid of the low end, and it lowers the volume, basically. And that's during the build-ups only. It's not during the drop. So just to kind of give it that washout feel. So that's the second sound, and then this one is... So this is Nexus. It's pretty wide. Use the body one from EDM3. Nexus, you can't change anything, so you literally click on this and that's it. I just turned off the reverb, the delay, and under the modulation, I fixed the pitch bends to this so that it matches my other sounds, right? So it's like portamento mode is the most important. I don't know if I used any like actual pitch bending, like drawing in the pitch bends, but I did use portamento, so you have to make sure that's on the right one. And then I have this sound, which is really wide, to give it that wide one. This is what it looks like. Large amounts of unison. The blend is pretty high, so you get a lot of width, and then even I also have a hyper dimension on it to get it even more wide. And then processing is the same. And then here's the second sound. So again, the main sound on this is the comb. The comb filter is what gives it this sound. So it really changes how the sound sounds, gives it a lot dirtier of a sound. You gotta be careful with the comb filter though, because sometimes it like delays the sound. Basically it delays the sound. So it's gonna sound, so when you play it like in your song, it's gonna sound like it's behind a little bit. So when it does that, you gotta bounce it to like audio, so like export it, and then you gotta like manually move it back to the grid. So basically you gotta quantize it after. Because that's how a comb filter is. It does a lot of phasing issues. So you gotta just be careful on that. Comb filter, reverb filter, most of those like these kind of heavy filter sounds, that's what they do. They sometimes like delay the sound. I'm not sure about the math behind it, but that's or the science behind it, but like that's what it does. Distortion, I have a tube distortion. I put this one, the other ones all had off, so there was no EQ pre on the distortion, but this one I have a pre EQ. So basically I'm EQing the sound to look like this. So it's basically a bandpass filter and then a huge amount of tube distortion to give it that sound. So without it, so if I turn it off, this is how it sounds. If I turn it on, it completely changes the sound. That's probably more important than the comb actually, that gives it this sound. So you got to just kind of mess with it, and then depending on where you can move this, or you can change the filter style to low pass or high pass or whatever. And then you can also move it too. You can also move the dry wet if you want some of the original sound. And then I have just a multi-band compressor and then another hyper dimension to get it wide. And then the same effects as always. Let's see what else I have. Oh, the kick. All right. Actually, I'll come back to the kick. Let me go over some of this other stuff. So there's claps. Just, grab a clap sample and throw it in there. Toms, just get samples and throw it in there. These fills are the same thing. Just get some fills and whatever sounds good. Chop them up and then make them match the melody of your track. Don't just grab a random fill sample and toss it in there. Because the rhythm is going to be different. All that stuff's going to be different. You got to chop it and make it, similar to yours. That's what makes it sound good. You can't just grab someone else's fill and then expect it to sound good in your track. So that's like a tip there. A lot of people just like drag and pull, and like that's it might work, it might probably not. So you gotta be careful. I have a crash hitting every 4 bars. I have a downlifter hitting every 8 bars, and then I have some crowd noise, which I almost always put in my songs. Just kind of gives it an atmosphere. And then there's this compressor with a top kick to give it a sidechain, and then an EQ to get rid of the low end and the high end. And that's it for the drop. I'm gonna go back to the kick. All right, so here's what the kick sounds soloed. All right, so here's the first layer of the kick, just a cashmere sample. Here's I put a top kick on top of that. Another top kick. Here's a sub. So I think it's just a plain, so it's just a clean sub, just a sine wave. 8 voices but no detune. So and the retrig is on, so it's basically one mono sub. And then here's the sidechain on it. Does this have side? No, I know. So just some sidechain on it to get it out of the way of the kick. Pretty simple stuff there. Here's the low end of the bass. So here's what it sounds like. So that's what gives it that, you know, big room feel. I think it's, again, just a clean sub, but I have another oscillator an octave up. So it's basically two of them. And then I just put a decapitator, distorted the crap out of it. Drive is on 6. These are just different modes. I don't know if you guys have this plugin, Decapitator. It's probably the best plugin for like distortion, any kind of distortion you want, like dirty distortion. So I don't know what these modes are really. It's like they're like different style of distortion basically. It just kind of gives it a different feel. I guess I can just go through them real quick. So, yeah, that's that. E sounds the best. But you know, other times other ones sound just as good or better. Completely get rid of the low end. I don't want the sub. I already have a sub oscillator. I also get rid of the high end because I have a different one to do the high end. And then here's the LFO. Here's the tone. So that's the high end of it. So it's just a serum preset I made. Let's see what it sounds like. So it's the Evo sweep. So it's basically the stab. I use that same wavetable again because I want it to sound, everything kind of sound the same. Just again, change the warp. If you want to change the sound without really changing the sound, you change the warp. Change the warp, or you change kind of the wavetable. Wavetable will give you a different sound. But if you want a similar sound, but sound a little bit different, you change the wavetable position and you change the warp. Those will get it, you know, to sound different. Hyperdimension, just to make it a little bit wide. A tube distortion to distort it. Multiband compressor to bring up the high end. Again, get rid of the low end. The decapitator here is turned off, so you don't need it. Get rid of the low end, and then shave off some of that high end. A sausage fanner to get it loud, and then this is a curve for the LFO for the kick. So the reason it's like this is because I want it to hit loud and then go away, because I don't want it to just sound like it's constant bass the whole time, because that doesn't give you that, like the pounding feel. It gives you more of like a progressive house, you know, the bass is always sustained, the bass is always there. It gives you that feel, which I didn't want. I wanted it to sound like it's pounding. So that's why you get rid of the volume. You can also like do a cutoff filter and just get rid of the cutoff, like something like this. So if I turn this off, this is what it sounds like. Oh, wrong sound. This one. So basically, it's sustained the whole time. You're hearing the same thing the entire time. But what you could do is you can put a filter, right? I can do this, and then put a EQ. Turn this on. Turn this like this. You can also do something like that if you want. It kind of gives it more of a future house feel, but I mean, that is an option. And then I just have a white noise click just to give like a little impact at the beginning of the kick. And then these are just my sidechain triggers. These are not any sounds. So the entire kick again, let's see what's on the group. On the group I have just nothing, just an LFO to see what it looks like with everything together. Oh, I forgot to turn the... So that's how the kick sounds. That's also how the kick looks, if you care. I'll put it in the stem thing again. At this part, it pitches up. So that's the kick. I think that's the drop. It's everything for the drop. Let's just go over the break really quick. So just some sweeps and stuff to get it, you know, atmosphere. Give it some stuff going on. So here's the pad. which is just a serum. 2 saws, massive amounts of unison, detune, and just a little bit of movement to make it sound like it's kind of moving so it doesn't sound staticky and boring. And then here's the bass. Just a distorted sine wave. Nothing special there. So I have, so this thing is automated. What's automated here? Yeah. So this is one of the lead sounds that we had. I think it's the second sound that comes. We had the comb filter, if you guys remember. So I just kind of had it during the break. But what I did was the distortion is the mix on the tube distortion is going down. So it's going from 100% down to like 50. So it's sounding like less and less like the drop, like the sound from the drop. And then these are the sounds for the. So this is, pretty sure everyone knows this sound. It's the Kashmir war horn from his Silent pack. Pretty sure everyone has this sound. Ping pong delay, Valhalla reverb, and then same thing as before. And then I have this sound, which I made. Let's see what it looks like. Again, same sound as before, but I changed the filter. So instead of it being a comb filter, it's now this filter. And that's also a little bit of the reason why I used this sound and then lower the distortion on lower the dry wet on the distortion. So what that does is it makes it sound more and more similar to what's going on here. So it's kind of like a morphing of the sounds. Everything else is the same. And then here's the super saws. So they're not playing chords. They're playing just a typical regular one-hit melody, but they're pretty like detuned and stuff. Let's see what I think it's a preset from somewhere, Mother of Gods. So this is what it looks like. A lot of detune. Hyperdimension is, again, it's up there with a lot of mix. The mix is high on both. And big amounts of blend on both of these, so that it's as wide as it can get with whatever detune and unison settings you have. And that's it there. And there's just a fast, what's it called? Fast pitch modulation on the semitone. So it's just kind of quickly. That's why you hear like that little pop sound at the beginning of the sound. I don't know if you can't really tell, but I mean that's what it does. Just basically a fast pitch modulation. I think this sound is. I don't know why I use 2 layers. Oh, I think it's an octave. Yeah, it's an octave up. So this is just like whatever octave it's at, and this one is just an octave up. I don't know why I didn't just put them on the same patch, but I don't know. Whatever. So same, nothing to show there. Same thing. Here's the stabs for the break. So this is just a massive supersaw, huge amounts of detune and unison. Got this from Spire. It's called Splice. It's called Supersaw by Mike Hawkins. It's in like one of his Splice packs. I don't know, probably one of the best supersaw ones you can find on Serum. This is what it looks like with the effects and everything. And then this is what that looks like. Most important thing here is the detune. And the fact that you're playing chords. So when you have a supersaw, chords are what makes it sound fat. If you just hit one note, it sounds very weak. It sounds very boring. So like if I were to like delete these, it doesn't have the same power compared to. So the beauty in a supersaw, or the the trick in the supersaw is the chords. It's not the actual synth, because you know you're gonna find a million people telling you how to make supersaws, and they're all gonna tell you the same exact thing: detune and unison, and then you play one note and you're like, why doesn't it sound fat? And it's because you have to layer it with a bunch of notes, make a big chord out of it. So that's the first one. There's reverb on it, pretty long decay, 2.46. And then I have this brass from Nexus, Drop Brass 2. Again, if you have the EDM3 sample pack, you can just double click this, turn off the delay and the reverb, and you have the sound ready. This is what it sounds like. So this is also doing chords, F, C, F, and then also the low F. And then again, reverb, OTT, take out the low end, sausage fattener, and then I have this sound as well. This is mostly a mono sound because those other ones are wide, so you want something kind of in the middle. It's basically the stab from the drop. Same thing, the evil sweep, sync. I think it's that first stab, yeah. And then, yeah, it's the same exact one. So that's doing that. I already went over the chords. What's this extra? There's just some atmospheric stuff to kind of, you know, make it interesting as the break goes. So it's kind of, you know, rotating in. I mean, it's sweeping in. Gives it that feel. So in this one, I did the LFO in the synth. Remember how I said before, like, oh, I could have just done that LFO tool in the synth. So that's what I did in this one. I just put this LFO with this shape. So it's basically, it's on a half. The rate's on a half, so this whole thing is a half. So this is like an eighth, this is a fourth. So this is basically a 16th. So every 16th, it's like stuttering, and then it's on the volume. So the volume is reaching the max, which is right here. It's max volume, and then in here there's no volume, and then max volume, no volume, and that's how you get the stutter. And if I were to, you know, bypass it and then just have it like this, just a sustained sound. So that's how you get that. I think this is just like an octave lower. Now this one's not stuttering, and it's just massive amounts of detune and unison. No, actually, no, it's not much unison, but a pretty good amount of detune, and then I probably have a hyperdimension. Yeah. See how it's like it's more than the other ones. I think that's it. And then there's some claps here, just some impacts and stuff. Another build up. And then the drop, I don't know if anything, like, nothing mixing-wise is different in the drop, in the second drop. Pretty much the same. And then outro, song is done. So, again, I'll leave the stems and stuff I'll leave a link for the stems. And then you guys can just download those for free. Just gonna, you know, force you to follow us because I need to get subscribers on the channel for, you know, I give you something, you give us something. That's it. So I'll do more of these drop tutorials. Hopefully they're helpful. I know they're long shit to get through, but hopefully it's helpful. Or you can just download the stems and, you know, figure it out yourself. Doesn't really matter. Just if you have any questions, put them in the comment section, and then I'll answer them as quick as I can. And that's it. See you guys next time. Bye.